you know, the Dan Golden Klezmer Band, the Dan Golden Greek Orchestra, the Dan Golden Polish Orchestra, depending on who they were playing for, the same band would have different names.
I mean, they just changed the titles.
Did you vary
Yeah,
the music at
the
all?
same
It's the
musicians.
music.
Well, they would play, well, of course, with the well, Greek stuff and Jewish stuff particularly, it's the same tunes, you know, very similar. And, but, you know, as I say, Ukrainian, Russian, I mean, it was, yeah, it's all the same stuff, you know. But, just,
Leo Rostam. That's the book that the big father was reading, Leon the Big Father.
Oh, really? Did you end up getting it?
No. He was reading it, the Yorkshire.
Did you end up seeing the movie? We were talking to somebody called...
We saw the tape, remember? We had the tape. And it seems like everybody else had seen it, too.
Someone was talking about that at the Friday night dinner. Was that who did it?
You were?
We're talking about the movie.
Oh, it was a minion in the morning.
Maybe that was what it was.
It was Len Shankman that wanted it. That's what
We borrowed it. He didn't like it.
He didn't like it?
He didn't like it.
He thought it was terrible.
Okay.
Well, actually, Rosemont.
Okay, you're gonna...
And we also talked about some of the issues if you lived in the shtetl, like when was the next program coming, and we talked a little bit about the history of how the shtetl came to be, and but there were a few things that we didn't touch on, and we just started to touch on Shabbat, and I thought we should just talk a little more about Shabbat, and the other first thing that came up was someone asked about social interaction. What was social interaction like in the shtetl? And I can't remember who asked, but shtetl, of who was at the top and who was at the bottom. And what I thought we would do is then maybe look at one other thing, one or two other positive attributes of the shtetl. And then what I thought we should do is to just for a few minutes discuss what we saw as the really strong elements of the shtetl, of Jewish life in the shtetl, and then think for a minute about, are any of those missing from our lives, and could we, in some ways, do something to revive them, those elements. So that's the aim of the objective. And then Gail will form the committees.
That's useful. All right.
Yeah. And we'll just make those things happen. So that's my objective, is to finish off talking a little bit about the shtetl. There aren't any 1,000 pictures like there were last time within the shtetl. And there's some terms that maybe people have heard before, but for me they didn't ring a bell. And I may have heard a couple of them before. But the terms are shame, prosta, and yichus. And I think I'd heard, the one I'd heard was prosta.
Prost? Ordinary.
The way, the context I'd heard it in was somebody, my grandmother would describe it as a prosta ying.
Yeah. I like prost.
But they never used it, that term. I mean, actually, they never used it. But that wasn't the use, it wasn't the shtetl.
Refer to a person as a character of a person?
Would you read that section?
Or as Shana might say, really, that's not true. It's sort of the context that I've heard it, as I've said.
Like an elaboration.
That's right.
This is a
pretty
page.
story.
But it's
tall
really
tale.
not very
Exaggerated.
tale.
Yeah.
Which one?
No.
Shana
Well,
might say.
I've heard the phrase, a
Shana
pretty
might say.
story
Yeah.
used in the same context, that's
Yeah.
what And a social conscience, fulfilling his responsibility to the community by service to the group and its individuals. His accepted obligation is to succor and protect those who are less wealthy, less privileged than he. He sees to it that the poor people have something to make the Sabbath, and that there is order in it. Who was to study when the Prosta Yidden would hear and maybe learn something. For example, between afternoon and evening prayers there's some time. Nobody went home then. They would sit around in Shul and study. The Shena Yidden used to The Shena Yidden must answer all these questions. In fact, they used to inspire the Prosta Yidden to ask questions, and sometimes over one paragraph in the Talmud, they would spend hours. This was the role of the Shena Yidden.
So it means beautiful, but more in an internal sense rather than outside.
And the attributes regularly associated with it. He is regularly described as one uncouth, unmannered. The person un-Jewish in the shtegel carries the same kind of rebuke as the term un-American in the United States. It means not only divergence from the group pattern, but also a falling away from the values and standards considered noblest and best. A few characterize the prosta as those who work for others and who are not their own masters. A good many, in other ways, related the status to occupation. The prosta, I apologize for this, are the butchers. They are the shoemakers, the tailors. They are the ones who do real work. Real dirty work. Occupation, however, is associated with status, although its relation to education and not in itself. A man who works with his hands is not necessarily prost. If he has the manner and
position, but cannot be called pedigree since it can be acquired currently as well as by inheritance and does not necessarily require transmission by blood. Essentially, it is a product of learning plus wealth, of learning without wealth, or of wealth so used as to be translatable into the highest common denominator, the fulfillment of divine command. Yichus achieved through inheritance is proportionate to the number of learned, eminent, or notably charitable men in the family. A person describes his own yichus or that of another by listing the scholars and philanthropists on his family tree. This ancestor yichus, known as yichus avos, fathers of the fathers, cannot be retained merely. Moreover, a man whose family lacks yichus may attain it for himself. The status differentiation symbolized in the arrangement of the synagogue seats exists in conjunction with a strong emphasis on individual equality. The quotes, common man, seated on the wooden bench at the rear of the synagogue, can aspire to a seat on the east wall, if not for himself, then for his son. The son may become shamed by outstanding scholarship, by great business success combined with
Stability, somebody said.
Sport is so stable.
Yeah. What was that?
Instability.
Yeah.
So, less chance of intermarriage. If your community is completely Jewish, then you're not going to have outsiders coming in. Okay.
Yiddish, okay.
Well,
And I think one thing that has made for each other, especially siblings. Okay.
One group did not respect the first dimension.
No, I'm talking about siblings.
Oh, the second family, yeah.
I got the impression though that Sidim, for instance, would not be associating with the rest, and people from one trade might not, respect another as much.
But it's
Not
among
even
siblings.
the bigotry.
Kennedy is mutually supportive because everybody is Jewish, and the whole idea of maintaining Yiddishkeit within the community, that sounds ideal, but the schisms between one group and another, the factions, might have...
How can you say 10,000 people? Probably don't have, there wouldn't be enough butchers.
Well, sure, no.
So,
But you did say there was a hierarchy within the community.
oh yeah, and people with yichus and people with learning.
Well, I like the values that I heard, and that status is acquired through learning or through wealth used in a